Okay, so you sent us some fascinating stuff about this Planetary Health Congress happening in Lisbon.
Uh-huh.
And it seems like a total game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about rethinking what health even means.
It's not just about individual well-being anymore. This Congress is really putting a spotlight on planetary health.
Yeah.
This idea that human health is deeply intertwined with the health of our planet.
Yeah.
It's a pretty revolutionary concept.
And what's really caught my eye in all this is the focus on sustainable food.
Right.
The sources suggest our current system is actually a major contributor to climate change.
Right.
Did that surprise you at all?
Honestly, the scale of it is pretty alarming.
Yeah.
The Congress organizers are pulling no punches. They're highlighting the urgency of the climate crisis. We're seeing record temperatures, extreme weather events.
Right.
The planet's sending us a pretty clear message.
It's not some future threat anymore. It's happening right now.
Exactly.
The sources actually mentioned we've entered a new geological epoch called the Anthropocene.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
It's a pretty sobering realization.
Yeah.
The Anthropocene is this new era defined by humanity's massive impact on the Earth.
Okay.
We've essentially become a force of nature capable of altering the planet on a geological scale.
Wow, that's incredible and kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
And speaking of terrifying, the sources cite some pretty daunting stats from the IPCC.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, right?
Right.
They're saying we need a 43% emissions reduction by 2030
Yeah.
and carbon neutrality by 2050. Those are some serious targets.
They are. And what makes it even more pressing is that it's not just an environmental issue.
Right.
The degradation of our natural systems directly impacts human health, especially for the most vulnerable among us. We're talking about a full-blown public health crisis.
That's where this whole planetary health concept comes in,
Really
right?
exact.
So it's not just a new buzzword. It's a whole new way of thinking about health.
It is. It's a new way of thinking about health. Planetary health recognizes that human, animal, and environmental well-being are all interconnected. It's like this giant web. You can't have healthy people on a sick planet.
I'm starting to see why this Congress is such a big deal.
Wow.
It's not just about tweaking a few things. It's a complete paradigm shift. But okay, how do they actually define planetary health? The sources have some pretty dense explanations.
They do. There's one from the Rockefeller Foundation Lancet Commission that's pretty comprehensive, but to put it simply,
Yeah.
it's about recognizing that our well-being is fundamentally dependent on the well-being of the planet.
So it's not just about individual health anymore.
Right.
It's about the health of the whole system.
Precisely. And what's interesting is that the term planetary health was only coined in 2015.
Oh, really?
It marks a pretty significant turning point in how we approach public health.
So this Congress in Lisbon is really at the forefront of this movement.
Yeah.
And from what I'm gathering, they're putting a huge emphasis on sustainable food.
Our current food system is a major contributor to climate change, generating somewhere between 26 and 34% of all global emissions.
Wow. I had no idea it was that much. It's hard to wrap your head around those numbers. What specifically about our food system is causing such a big impact?
Well, livestock is the biggest culprit.
Okay.
It's responsible for almost double the emissions of plant-based foods. Think about the land use, the water consumption, the methane released by cows. It all adds up.
Double. That's crazy. I knew meat had an environmental impact, but that's a real eye-opener. Does that mean we all need to become vegetarians?
It's not necessarily about going completely vegetarian or vegan, although the Congress is definitely promoting plant-based diets.
Okay.
It's more about making conscious choices and shifting towards a more sustainable food system overall.
So reducing our meat consumption could actually make a real difference in tackling climate change.
Absolutely.
Or-
In fact, the sources suggest that even if we completely stopped burning fossil fuels today, which is a huge feat in itself,
Right.
the way we currently produce food could still prevent us from reaching our climate goals.
Wow.
It's that significant.
Okay, I'm definitely starting to see why this Congress is focusing so heavily on food. But let's talk more about the Congress itself. What are they actually trying to achieve?
Well, it's happening on March 1st and 2nd at the Universidade Lusófona de Lisboa.
Okay.
It's being organized by Eat to Care, a group dedicated to sustainable food, and the university itself.
Eat to Care. The name is pretty self-explanatory. And what's the vibe of the Congress? Is it just a bunch of academics talking amongst themselves?
Not at all. They're bringing together a really diverse group, experts, leaders, policymakers, and even everyday folks like you and me.
Cool.
They want to discuss solutions, promote collaboration, and basically create a roadmap for this global shift towards planetary health.
I'm seeing from the schedule that they're doing short presentations, panel discussions, and even serving plant-based meals. It definitely doesn't sound like your typical boring conference.
It doesn't. And one of the things I find really interesting is that one of the organizers, Gabriel Mateus, is a nutritionist who created this course called Making the Kitchen a Pharmacy.
Making the kitchen a pharmacy. I love that. What exactly does that involve?
Well, it's all about empowering people to take control of their health through their food choices, using everyday ingredients to create meals that are both delicious and nourishing.
That's a perfect example of how this Congress is bringing together seemingly disparate fields, nutrition, environmental science policy, to address this interconnected challenge of planetary health.
Exactly. And another organizer, Francisco Guerrero, produced an award-winning documentary called Meat, The Unsustainable Footprint. I'm guessing that'll be a hot topic at the Congress.
That sounds like a must-watch. We should definitely share a link to that with our listeners.
Absolutely. So it's clear this Congress is going beyond just talking about problems. They're showcasing solutions and inspiring action. It's pretty exciting.
It is. Okay, so we've got this big picture of planetary health and how this Congress is trying to tackle it with a big focus on food. But let's bring it back to our listener. What does all this mean for them?
That's the key question, isn't it? We're at a crossroads. The choices we make today, from the food we eat to the policies we support, have a massive impact on the health of the planet and on our own health, too.
It's like this Planetary Health Congress is a giant wake-up call.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together and our actions have consequences.
Right.
But it's not about guilt or blame. It's about finding solutions.
Right. So we're curious, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah.
Does it change how you view your own health or the choices you make? We'd love to hear your reflections.
And hey, if you happen to be in Lisbon on March 1st or 2nd, maybe check out the Congress in person. They even have those plant-based meals, remember?
Always a bonus.
But even if you can't be there in person,
Yeah.
we'll be diving deeper into all this in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
You know, it's remarkable how this Congress is really taking this concept of planetary health and making it a tangible thing. You know, something we can actually wrap our heads around.
It's not just some abstract idea, right?
Yeah.
The sources we've been diving into really delve into what it means for our everyday lives.
Yeah.
And it's honestly pretty eye-opening.
Absolutely. Planetary health goes beyond just acknowledging the link between human and environmental health.
Right.
It's about understanding the complex interconnections between human systems, our political, economic, and social structures, and the Earth's natural systems.
So it's like zooming out to see the bigger picture, recognizing that the way we've organized our societies actually has a direct impact on the planet's health and ultimately our own.
Exactly. It's this feedback loop. The choices we make, the policies we implement, the way we produce and consume it all matters. And as we talked about earlier, one of the most impactful areas is our food system.
Right. And the sources paint a pretty stark picture.
Yeah.
They're saying the way we produce food could actually prevent us from reaching our climate goals, even if we completely stopped burning fossil fuels.
Yeah.
That's a pretty heavy thought.
It is sobering, but it also underscores the immense potential for positive change.
Right.
Transforming our food system could be a game changer for the planet and our health.
So what would a truly sustainable food system look like? What kind of changes are we talking about here?
Well, the Congress is going to be exploring that in detail.
Yeah.
But from what we're seeing in these sources, a major shift away from animal-based products is key.
Yeah, they really call out livestock as the major culprit when it comes to emissions contributing twice as much as plant-based foods. What are some of the practical implications of that? Does that mean we all need to become vegetarians?
It's not necessarily about everyone going vegetarian or vegan, although reducing our reliance on animal products is a big part of it.
Okay.
It's more about diversifying our diets, exploring delicious plant-based alternatives, and supporting sustainable farming practices.
That makes sense. It's about making informed choices and shifting our mindsets rather than just following the same old patterns. But I imagine for a lot of people, meat is such a central part of their diet.
Yeah.
And culture is this kind of shift even realistic?
It's a big shift for sure, but the Congress is emphasizing that it's not about deprivation. It's about finding new and exciting ways to enjoy food that's good for us and good for the planet.
And that's where things like Gabriel Mateus' making the kitchen a pharmacy concept come in, right?
Yeah.
Empowering people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in their own kitchens.
Yeah.
What are some specific examples of that?
Well, think about incorporating more plant-based proteins into your meals, like lentils, beans, and tofu, experimenting with different grains like quinoa and farro, getting creative with vegetables and fruits. There are so many delicious and nutritious options out there.
It sounds like it's more about adding variety and exploring new flavors rather than just cutting things out.
Right.
I can get on board with that.
Exactly. And there are so many resources available these days. Cookbooks, websites, even social media accounts dedicated to plant-based cooking. It's easier than ever to find inspiration and support.
That's really encouraging. So it's not just about individual choices, though.
Yeah.
The sources also talk a lot about policy changes needed to create a truly sustainable food system.
Mm-hmm.
What are they suggesting?
They're highlighting the need for policies that support sustainable farming practices, incentivize plant-based diets, and reduce food waste.
Okay.
For example, we could see subsidies for farmers who adopt regenerative agriculture practices or taxes on foods with high environmental footprints.
I can see how those kinds of policies could really shift the landscape and make sustainable options more accessible and affordable for everyone.
Right.
It's about creating a system that makes it easier to make healthy choices for ourselves and the planet.
Exactly. It's about shifting the focus from short-term profits to long-term well-being for both people and the planet.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture of planetary health and the Congress's focus on sustainable food. But I'm curious to learn more about the specific topics they'll be diving into. What are some of the key areas they're covering?
They've actually organized the Congress into 6 main areas, each with its own dedicated panel discussion.
Cool.
It seems like they're really trying to provide a comprehensive overview of the challenges and opportunities within planetary health.
Okay, let's break it down. What's the first one on the agenda?
The first panel is called Eating Without Devouring the Planet Agriculture.
Okay.
It's all about rethinking our agricultural practices to feed the world sustainably. They'll be exploring innovative solutions that work in harmony with nature.
I'm guessing this is where they'll be talking about things like regenerative agriculture and reducing our reliance on chemical fertilizers and pesticides.
Definitely. It'll be fascinating to hear what the experts have to say about the latest developments in sustainable farming practices.
And what about the second panel? What are they focusing on there?
The second panel is Eating Without Devouring the Planet, Sea, and Fisheries.
Okay.
This one will focus on the role of our oceans in sustainable food production, which is particularly important considering the growing concerns about overfishing and the impact of climate change on marine ecosystems.
That's a crucial aspect, especially with the increasing demand for seafood globally. What kind of solutions will they be exploring?
They'll be looking at the future of aquaculture and responsible fishing practices, basically figuring out how we can harness the bounty of the oceans without depleting them. It's about finding that delicate balance between human needs and ecological sustainability.
That's a great segue into the third panel, Healthy Planet, Healthy People,
Yeah.
which focuses on how a healthy environment is the foundation for human well-being.
Yeah.
It seems like this panel really gets into the nitty-gritty of how environmental degradation directly impacts our health.
You got it. We'll be talking about things like air and water pollution, the spread of infectious diseases, and even the mental health consequences of living in a degraded environment.
It's easy to forget that our health is so closely tied to the health of the planet.
Yeah.
We often think about them as separate issues.
Yeah.
But this panel really drives home that connection.
It's a powerful reminder that we can't have one without the other. And speaking of connections, the fourth panel, Economics Sensible Resource Management,
Right.
explores how we can build an economy that operates within the limits of our planet.
This is where things get really interesting, right? Because our current economic system is based on endless growth, which is clearly not sustainable in the long run. How do we even begin to rethink that?
It's a huge challenge, but this panel will delve into concepts like circular economy, sustainable business practices, and rethinking traditional measures of economic progress.
So moving away from a sole focus on GDP and incorporating things like well-being and environmental sustainability into our economic models.
Precisely. It's about finding ways to thrive economically without sacrificing the health of the planet.
Okay, so we've got sustainable agriculture, oceans, human environment health link, and rethinking economics. What about the role of government and policy?
That's where the fifth panel comes in. Public policy is implementing the European Green Deal. They'll be examining how government policies can drive the transition towards a more sustainable future with a focus on the European Green Deal.
The European Green Deal is a pretty ambitious plan, right? Aiming to make Europe the first climate-neutral continent by 2050.
Uh-huh.
What are some of the key aspects they'll be discussing?
They'll be looking at how specific policies within the Green Deal can be implemented to promote planetary health and environmental sustainability across various sectors, from energy to transportation to agriculture.
It's great to see that there's this concrete plan in action, even if it's just within Europe. For now, hopefully it can serve as a model for other regions to follow.
It's definitely setting a precedent. And finally, we have the sixth panel, which is a roundtable discussion called Communication as a Driver of Transition.
Okay.
This one focuses on the crucial role of communication in raising awareness and inspiring action on climate change and planetary health.
This feels especially relevant in today's world, with so much misinformation and competing narratives out there. How do we cut through the noise and effectively communicate the urgency of these issues?
That's the million-dollar question. This panel will likely explore different communication strategies, the role of the media, social media, and even the power of individual conversations in shaping public opinion and inspiring action.
It's about finding ways to make these complex issues relatable, engaging, and empowering, rather than overwhelming or guilt-inducing.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond fear and doom and gloom and fostering a sense of hope and possibility.
So it seems like this Congress is really covering all the bases, from the science to the solutions to the communication strategies needed to create real change. It's pretty impressive.
It really is. And what's particularly interesting is that they're not just focusing on high-level discussions. They're also creating a space for everyday people to get involved and learn about how they can make a difference.
Right, that's what struck me as well. They're not just preaching to the choir. They're reaching out to a broader audience and making this whole concept of planetary health accessible and actionable for everyone.
It's clear that they're trying to foster a sense of community and shared responsibility, recognizing that we all have a role to play in creating a healthier planet. And speaking of roles to play, I'm curious to learn more about the people behind this Congress. The sources mention a few key organizers who seem to have pretty impressive backgrounds.
Yeah, they seem like a pretty dynamic group. Let's start with Gabriel Mateus, the nutritionist who created the Making the Kitchen a Pharmacy concept.
Yeah.
What else do we know about him?
Well, it turns out he has a pretty diverse background. He also holds degrees in religious studies and history of religions, and he's currently involved in research on nutrition and sustainability as part of the Insectra project, which is funded by the Portuguese Recovery and Resilience Program.
Wow, that's quite a range of expertise. It sounds like he brings a unique perspective to the table, combining his knowledge of nutrition with his broader understanding of human systems and sustainability.
Absolutely. And then there's Telma Pedrera, who has extensive experience in event production and public relations.
Okay.
She's worked as CEO of Idealis and Visual LEAX, and she's also been involved with Santa Ana Wine and Culture.
So she's clearly the mastermind behind the logistics and organization of the Congress, making sure everything runs smoothly and reaches a wide audience.
It seems so her expertise is essential for an event of this scale and impact. And then we have Francisco Guerrero, who has a background in environmental policy. He served as a member of the European Parliament from 2019 to 2024, where he was the first vice president of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development.
Ah, so he's the one who brings that deep understanding of policy and how to translate ideas into action. And of course, he's the one who produced the documentary Meat, The Unsustainable Footprint, right?
That's right. He clearly has a deep understanding of the environmental impact of our food choices and the policy changes needed to create a more sustainable food system.
I'm sensing a pattern here. These organizers are all deeply passionate about sustainability and bringing about real change, each approaching it from their own unique angle.
Absolutely. And finally, we have Sandra Marquez, who has a background in archaeology
Oh.
and has been involved in research and activism related to environmental sustainability.
And she's also a founding member of the Observatory for Obstetric Violence and executive producer of the award-winning documentary Meat, The Unsustainable Footprint.
That's right. It seems like she brings a strong research background and a commitment to social and environmental justice to the team. So it's quite a powerhouse team, each with their own unique expertise, but united by their passion for planetary health.
It really is, and I think that's what makes this Congress so promising. They've brought together a diverse group of people who are all dedicated to finding solutions for a healthier planet and a healthier future for all.
It's inspiring to see so many people coming together to tackle these complex challenges.
Yeah.
And it really makes me feel hopeful that we can create positive change.
It gives me hope that we can actually create the kind of world we want to live in, a
Right.
world where human and planetary health are no longer in conflict, but rather intertwined and mutually supportive.
That's a beautiful vision, and I think this Congress is a step in the right direction. It's raising awareness, fostering collaboration, and inspiring action.
It's about time we started thinking about health in a more holistic way, recognizing that it's not just about our individual bodies anymore. It's about the health of the entire system, the health of our planet, and the health of all living things.
And that's what makes this Congress so significant. It's a reminder that we're all interconnected and that the choices we make today will shape the future of our planet and the well-being of generations to come. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's bring it back to the present moment. And our listener, we've thrown a lot of information at you, and it can be overwhelming to think about the scale of the climate crisis and the need for systemic change.
Right.
But here's the thing. Every single one of us has the power to make a difference.
It starts with small steps. It starts with awareness. It starts with asking ourselves, what can I do in my own life to contribute to a healthier planet?
Maybe it's making more conscious food choices, reducing your waste, supporting sustainable businesses, or getting involved in advocacy efforts.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's simply having conversations with your friends and family about these issues, spreading awareness and inspiring others to take action.
Because every little bit counts, every action, no matter how small, ripples outwards and contributes to the collective effort.
And the more people who join the movement, the more momentum we build towards creating a truly sustainable and just world. So don't underestimate your power. Don't feel paralyzed by the enormity of the challenge. Instead, focus on what you can do right here, right now to make a positive impact.
Because together we can create a future where planetary health is not just a concept, but a reality.
That's a future worth striving for. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back in the next part of our deep dive to explore even more about this Planetary Health Congress and what it means for all of us. Stay tuned.
You know, as we're wrapping up our deep dive into this Congress,
Yeah.
one thing that really stands out to me is that it's happening in Lisbon.
Right.
Portugal has been making some pretty impressive strides in terms of renewable energy and sustainability lately.
Yeah.
Haven't they?
They really have. They've embraced solar and wind power, and they've been actively working to reduce their carbon footprint.
So it seems fitting that this Congress, which is all about creating a more sustainable future, is taking place in a country that's actually putting those ideas into practice.
It definitely adds a layer of authenticity to it, doesn't it?
Totally.
It's one thing to talk about these concepts, but it's another to see them being implemented on a national level.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
sends a powerful message that change is possible.
Right.
And it's happening right now. And speaking of change, one of the things that really jumped out at me from these sources is this pledge for planetary health they keep
Oh,
mentioning.
yes, the pledge.
What's that all about?
It's basically a call to action for health professionals to commit to planetary health principles.
So it's like a Hippocratic oath for the Anthropocene era.
Exactly.
It recognizes that the health of their patients is fundamentally linked to the health of the planet.
It's a shift in perspective, for sure, urging healthcare providers to consider the underlying environmental and social factors that contribute to illness.
Rather than just treating the symptoms.
Exactly.
So it's about taking a more holistic approach to health, recognizing that it's not just about individual bodies, but about the well-being of the whole system.
Precisely. And it goes beyond just individual actions as well.
Okay.
The pledge calls on health professionals to use their influence to advocate for systemic change, to advocate for policies that protect the environment and promote health equity.
That's a crucial point, because as we've been discussing,
Yeah.
individual actions, while important, are not enough on their own.
Right. Yeah.
We need large-scale systemic change to create a truly sustainable and healthy future.
We do. It's about recognizing that we're all part of this interconnected web,
Right.
and we need to work together across disciplines and sectors to address these complex challenges.
So we've explored this idea of planetary health. We delved into the Congress itself, and we've even gotten to know the inspiring people behind it all. But as we wrap up, I want to circle back to you, the listener.
It's always good to bring it back to the personal level, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
Yeah,
and it can feel overwhelming to think about these issues.
for sure.
But I think the key takeaway is that we all have a role to play
We do.
in creating a healthier future.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be grand or heroic. It
Yeah.
can start with simple, everyday choices.
Like, what are some things our listeners can do right now to start incorporating these ideas into their lives?
Well, we talked about making more sustainable food choices.
Yeah.
Maybe try incorporating one meatless meal into your week or exploring some new plant-based recipes.
That's a good one.
Reducing food waste is another big one,
Right.
being mindful of what you're buying and using up leftovers.
And it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
No, it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And it can even be fun.
It can be.
Exploring new cuisines, connecting with local farmers markets,
Yeah.
getting creative in the kitchen.
It's about making those changes feel empowering and enjoyable, not restrictive.
Right. And beyond food,
Hmm.
what are some other ways listeners can get involved?
Supporting sustainable businesses is a big one.
Yeah.
Voting for policies that align with planetary health principles.
That one.
Educating yourself and having conversations with friends and family about these issues.
Yeah.
Every little bit counts.
Because when we all start making these small changes, they add up to something much bigger.
I do?
It creates a ripple effect
Yeah.
that can ultimately lead to the systemic transformations we need.
That's the power of collective action, and I think that's the message that this Planetary Health Congress is really trying to drive home.
Right.
It's not about waiting for someone else to fix things. It's about recognizing our own agency and taking action in our own lives and communities.
So to wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
we hope this has inspired you to learn more about planetary health. To find your own ways to contribute to a healthier future, keep diving deeper, keep asking questions, and keep those conversations going.
Because the future of our planet and our health is ultimately in our hands. Thanks for joining us.